Hi, everybody. This is Professor Erica Vogel, and this lecture just gives you an overview of what we're going to be doing this semester in class. So you can call me Erica or Dr. Vogel or Professor Vogel. Any of those things are okay. I just don't like Mrs. Vogel for some reason. So just call me Erica or Dr. Vogel or Professor. Okay, there's my email address, evogel@saddleback.edu, and this is Introduction to Cultural Anthropology. What we're going to do in this lecture is introduce the course, talk about our main questions and topics for the semester, and go over the assignments and readings so you can get started. This is a picture of me some years ago. No, not too long ago, but I am in Peru in this picture, and I'm doing what we call field work or participant observation. And my research is about migration between Latin America and Asia, and I look at issues of globalization, religious conversion, and um, transnationalism. So, what I was doing here was I was hanging out with some people who had family members who had migrated to South Korea. And I was just with this family. Their uncle was there in South Korea. And then I went to South Korea. If you look at the bottom picture, is me with some Peruvian Korean families, and we were making Peruvian food in their house in Korea. So I went back and forth in what is called transnational ethnography because I was between two nations, right? And then I also have a project which is about K-pop or Korean pop music in Mexico City. And that picture is a poster that I saw in Mexico City, which is advertising K-pop dance classes. So it says Clases de Baile K-pop. And there were people who attending the class who were from ages like 13 all the way to about 40. So this is like many different kinds of people going to this class and coming together around the idea of K-pop. And I was doing research, interviewing people, attending different events to see what the meaning of that was to them or why they would participate or what's produced because of that. And those are just some examples of what anthropologists do. I'm a cultural anthropologist, and we study culture across space and time, and we usually have specializations or specialties, and those are mine. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask me. And then if you look on my website, I have some links to the articles that I've written, and you're welcome to check those out. So I have a question for you. Have you ever visited another culture, or do you belong to more than one culture right now? Think about that. And do you ever feel strange moving between them? So, when you move between the cultures that you're familiar with, or when you travel, what are the things that suddenly you realize maybe about your own culture or that stand out as being different? So, when I teach this on campus, we have a discussion about this topic, and usually people bring up stuff like the food, the way that traffic moves, or if you're allowed to cross the street, if you can cross the street without, risking getting hit by a car, if there are cars, the languages that people use, how you're allowed to dress, um, kind of the religious beliefs of different people, and what people look like. So, all of these things are related to culture, and we're going to talk about what culture is in the next lecture, but just kind of think about that. Like, what is culture? Because it's not necessarily, high culture like just Shakespeare or something, but culture is basically the way that we see the world and our traditions and our rituals and the values that we associated with different symbols. And as anthropologists, we study what those are and then see how they change. So, our main questions this semester are: what can studying anthropology tell us about the variation of human practices, cultures, and beliefs across space and time? And what can studying culture tell us about the way our world works? So, for this first question, anthropology is across space and time, meaning we study everywhere and all time periods. As cultural anthropologists, we're mostly looking at contemporary time. But if anybody has taken bio or physical anthropology, they look millions of years ago, and they're still anthropologists, right? Or archaeologists is like cultural anthropology, but using cultures that don't exist anymore in the immediate past. Okay, but we also ask questions about how our world works. That's that second question there. So maybe why are some people rich and others poor? And then even more than that is how come that seems normal to us? So how is it that, with new movements talking about the 99%, how is it that 1% of the people have, 99% of the money, and that we've come to see that as kind of being a normal thing, and that instead of fighting for equality, we kind of just hope that we too become part of that 1%. So how do those kind of inequalities become naturalized or seem normal to us? How are our beliefs formed, and how do they impact the world around us? So how do we pass culture on to our kids? And then how come we all the people maybe see the world the same way that you do, but then um, you could belong to two cultures at once. So maybe in your house, let's say if your parents come from another country, maybe that within your house you have kind of one cultural perspective, and then when you leave, you have a different one. So how are those beliefs formed, and then how do they impact the way we see the world? And then finally, how does culture change? Because sometimes we think of culture as not changing. Oh, in another country, maybe it's like maybe Japanese culture, we think, oh yeah, that's Japanese culture. It's always been that way, and it's never changing. But actually, all cultures change. Japanese culture changes, American culture changes, and then there's many cultures within, something what we would call American culture. Our objectives are to introduce key concepts and ideas in cultural anthropology. So I want you to know key terms and vocabulary words, and then also the main themes that we're interested in. So, like migration, gender, kinship, those kind of things. It's to help you develop critical thinking, reading, and writing skills. And I think this is something that you hope to get out of every class that you take. But with this class, what's kind of fun is that you will learn maybe particular vocabulary words or ways of thinking about something from anthropology. And then I'm going to have you analyze something in the real world using that. So, one of the assignments, you're going to watch a Disney film and then you're going to analyze it, um, the use of ethnic stereotypes and language in Disney films. And then you're going to use the terms that we learn in class in order to be able to do that. Okay? And write about that. So, I hope that helps you develop your skills. And it's going to give you the skills to ask critical questions about cultural practices and the world around you. So next time when you watch a Disney film, like a new one that comes out, you'll be like, whoa, now I can see this in a new way because of what I learned from my cultural anthropology class. And you're going to learn to think like an anthropologist, which is to see how everything is basically culturally constructed and looks probably different somewhere else. Even stuff that we think of as being universal, like marriage. You might think, oh, marriage. Everybody has marriage, so it must be the same everywhere. But actually, marriage is very different in different places. So we're going to look at what is universal and what is not universal. I mentioned a few of these topics, but here are some that we will discuss. So, what culture is and different perspectives of anthropology, migration, globalization, family, gender, and kinship, race, ethnicity, and the media, and magic, science, and religion. So, for that, one of the earlier assignments we're going to have, I mentioned to you, is about Disney films or any animated film that's come out in the US, thinking about language, culture, and media. So, one question I would ask you is why do the bad guys in Aladdin, if you've seen that movie, why do they all have, foreign accents, but Jasmine, who is the person featured here, sounds like an American girl? What do you guys think? So the bad guy has a foreign accent, and Jasmine sounds like an American girl. All right, what could that possibly be doing? And if you think of other movies you've seen, Disney movies or other animated movies, the main characters often have American accents, or what the author of an article we're going to read calls Muse, or mainstream U.S. English, where you kind of an accent where you're not really sure where it comes from. It's just an American accent. So, what does that teach children when the bad guy is speaking with a kind of an accented English? What does that teach kids? Think about that. And then, if there's a Chihuahua character, what accent does it usually have? So, if you've seen like Beverly Hills Chihuahua or any Disney movie with Chihuahuas, okay, they often have like kind of a Mexican American accent, or like a kind of a stereotyped Chicano or Latino accent. They're often actually voiced by the same actors, like a George Lopez or a Cheech Marin. So, what kind of personality does that character usually have? Are they, leaders of businesses and stuff, or are they doing something else? Okay, so think about the kind of stereotypes that are created through characterization in Disney films, and then what do they teach children about people that maybe they haven't met in person, or teach children about themselves and the way they speak. We're going to talk about family, gender, and relatives. How many genders are there? What do you guys think? So nowadays, we'd probably say a lot because, we are evolving as a society, and we are accepting more genders, transgender, or different kinds of gender identities. But if you were just to maybe look at the bathrooms that we have available, typically, how many are there? Just two, right? So, well, in America, we have like two set genders, kind of the main genders, and then um, that's it, right? You fit into one or the other, or you're somewhere in between, that kind of thing. But it's not that way everywhere. Actually, in Indonesia, they have a third gender called the warrior, and they are masculine, have male bodies, and a female soul. Okay, and they even have their own bathrooms. So it's male, female, and warrior, which is a totally different way of looking at the world, right? So you can see that they're culturally constructed, but then there's also something biological that goes into gender. So we're going to look at that, the kind of the relationship between culture and biology and gender. And then what makes your family your family? Is it blood, or is it marriage, like by law, or is it by who you hang out with and who you can depend on? So, can you make anybody your family member? These are all questions that we're going to talk about. Okay. And then these things may seem normal, or like I could say, how do you know who's in your family? And you're like, well, obviously, these people are in my family. But when you really look at it, which you're going to during the semester, because I'm going to have you make a kinship chart using the symbols that we use in anthropology, you'll see that it's more complicated than it seems on the surface. So many of these things seem normal, but they're actually what we call culturally constructed. And that means that um, within our cultural ways of seeing the world, that are the rules of our culture, we construct these things to seem normal, but they're in fact kind of created through a collective understanding of what is right, or what a woman is, or how a woman's supposed to dress, or how a man is supposed to dress, or who's in your family. Okay, and those can be different depending on what culture you are in. We're going to look at food, globalization, and economic systems. So, how do people produce food? What does the food we eat say about us? I'm going to have you look at articles about global foods, and you're going to see the origins of them. You're going to make kind of a commodity chart about where they come from, and then who consumes them and what they mean to different people. Okay, and then we'll look at economic systems. So in America, we say time is money, or money makes the world go round, but is that the same everywhere? Does everybody look at time as something that's finite, or something you can waste or use up? And do they think of time as being equal to money, or is that just an American kind of obsession? We're going to look at social stratification, which is like, inequalities or layers of society where people have different access to resources depending on their position in the hierarchy, in terms of race and class. And one of the things that you're going to learn that I think is one of the most important things that anthropology has to offer is that race is not based on biological fact, but in America and I think other places, we believe it is. So we're going to watch this great film called Race: The Power of an Illusion, and they the film starts with a group of students who are all taking a DNA test, and they're asked to predict who they think they're going to be more similar to, um, with the DNA based on the people in their class. And the white students, they guess that they are going to be most similar to other white students. The Latino students say they're going to be most similar to Latino students, etc. And then they're very surprised by the results because race has a long history in America, and there's these group of people called scientific racists, and they were actually scientists who were already racist. They believed that white people were biologically and culturally superior to other people. This is starting in the 1800s. And so they tried to gather evidence proving that. And in doing so, they would measure people's heads. They would measure the lengths of their arms and legs and try to compare them, and try to prove that white people had evolved more, or that there was many kind of biological differences between people, but actually that's not true. You're going to find in our class that race is actually culturally constructed, just like all the gender and family that I talked about. However, race is still real because socially real, meaning it's not biologically real, but people have different access to different resources based on their social race. So racism is still real, even though race is not based on biology. Okay, so you'll hear more about that during that week. And then our final topic is going to be religion, magic, and rituals. So we're going to think about what is the importance of religion and culture. Is religion universal? What's the difference between magic, science, and religion? And then you're going to think about the rituals you practice and why. So you're going to write a final paper on the rituals that someone practices, and you're going to analyze the significance of why they practice that ritual. So I put up a sample paper that I got in a previous semester that I really liked. So I would recommend, if you want to take a look at it and maybe look at the assignment and start preparing in terms of thinking about who you might want to interview or what kind of ritual you might want to be interviewing them about. Okay, so it could be any kind of ritual at all in the world. The more creative, the better. Required materials. You need to get 2 books. You can buy these or rent these or get them from the library. The first one is called Cultural Anthropology. That's a textbook by Amber and Ember. Make sure that you get either the 14th or the 13th edition and that you get the correct book. Use the ISBN because these Ember people have a lot of books. Okay. This is expensive, so I would recommend renting this one. And then the next one is called Voyages from Tongan Villages to American Suburbs. This is by an anthropologist named Kathy Small, and it's Cornell University Press. This I would recommend buying if you can, just because it's almost the same price as renting it. And I have to say that most students really love this book, so you might as well buy it. And you're going to need to use it a lot because we're going to be using it throughout the semester. This is about $20, I think, between 12 and 20. And then you're going to also have articles, films, lectures, and links on the course page, so make sure to check those out. This is what Voyages looks like, and it's a full-length ethnography. Ethnography might be a new word for you. Basically, an ethnography is the written account of what an anthropologist studies. So I told you about my research in Peru and South Korea. I was interviewing people, doing participant observation. When I came home and I wrote that up, like a description of what I found and then analyzing the significance of it, that is called an ethnography. So it's not a novel, because a novel is fiction, right? But it also uses kind of a narrative format, so we call that an ethnography. And this is an ethnography of globalization, migration, and tradition. And this is Tonga. This is where it takes place. It's an island in the South Pacific. And this is a woman who's wearing a mat skirt that she and other women in the village made. And kind of just to give you an idea of what this book is about, this skirt is also considered to be traditional wealth. So this skirt is like money, but it's also invaluable. It's like something that you probably wouldn't sell, but if you did, it would be worth hundreds of dollars. And then the older it gets, the more valuable it gets. And she only wears it on a special occasion. Okay, so um, this story is a great example of an ethnography because it is a longitudinal study. It happens over like 25 or 30 years. She does research in both Tonga and the United States because it's a family that she goes to Tonga as kind of a young, probably graduate student in her 20s, and she meets people in Tonga and she's interested in doing research about them. And then she realizes that many people are leaving. They're leaving this island and they're migrating out. A lot of them are going to Northern California and other places like Utah and Hawaii. So she wonders what's going on, and then over the years, she follows the family as they go between Tonga and the US. So she accompanies the family to California, then years later, she goes back to Tonga, and in doing so, she shows us how Tonga and the US and the people change as they migrate. So it's not just that Tonga changes, but actually the United States changes too, right? So, and then the people that she follows this family, you're going to get to know them, and she uses stories about, from them and direct quotes from them. So I think you're going to really like it. And it's a book where you're kind of thinking about transnational belonging, which means to belong in two places simultaneously. So they participate in both places, in Tonga and the U.S., by sending things home or by going to visit or talking on the phone and stuff like that. And so people can feel like they belong in two places, but sometimes you also feel like you don't belong anywhere because maybe in the US they feel out of place because of their Tongan beliefs. And then when they go home to Tonga, they're like, oh, I've changed. They realize they have changed. So Tonga doesn't feel like home. And then while they've been gone, Tonga has changed. So I think this book is going to resonate with you if you also know people who have migrated, or it's a good way to think about other groups who live in America and what does it mean to migrate and then undergo this kind of cultural change. So, what should you do first? Well, look around the course page. I have everything divided by week. So, if you look in week 1, week 2, week 3, you can see the different kind of assignments and resources, and also look on the syllabus for, an overall picture of what we're doing. But basically, each week has things like video lectures, like the one that you're watching right now, video links. So this could be to full-length films. We're only watching like one full-length film, but also clips that I refer to that you're going to need to know to watch for the exam. There's optional study guides for the textbooks chapters. So those are just kind of a summary of what's in each chapter. You can use those if you want to. Those are not required. There are discussion board postings. So each week has either 1 or 2 discussion boards you need to participate in. There's some handouts. There's some quizzes. Basically, just look on the course page for those items. What will you be graded on? Okay, there's discussion board postings. Those are the main kind of ways that we communicate in class. So you're going to make sure to want to do all of those. Make sure you do them all and you do them on time. They're worth a lot of your grade. They're worth about 5% each one of your grade. So I want you to get full points on those. And they're pretty fun, I think. There's 2 kinds of things you're going to be doing. One type is mini ethnographic projects. So, for example, you'll be analyzing the Disney film. You'll be researching and writing about a global food. You'll be drawing your family's kinship chart and then analyzing it. For the first assignment, you're going to be analyzing a contemporary piece of art or music and discussing it, how it relates to your life. So those are some kind of assignments. The other kinds of assignments for the discussion board are writing responses for Voyages, that book that I told you about Tonga. So you're going to be reading the book and then posting answers to questions I have. Your original post is always due by Wednesday. So you have to post your first thing by Wednesday. And then I want you to comment on 2 other people's posts by Saturday. So for full points, you should post on at least 3 different days. And I know this is hard to do, but what I want you to do, why I want you to do that is because I want you to be engaging with the course throughout the week. You can make your first post on Monday and then come back, Wednesday, Friday, like that. That's totally fine with me. I want you guys to be using the discussion board as a way to interact with each other and with me and to think through ideas. And so the only way that's going to happen is if you go in and you read other people's posts and you comment on them. And then check back on your post and see if anybody responded to you and respond to them. That way you'll get a nice discussion going. Other assignments, our other big assignment is the one I mentioned where you're going to be doing an ethnographic paper about rituals and everyday magic. You're going to be interviewing somebody about a ritual that they do, and then you will write a 5 to 7 page paper about it. That might sound like a lot right now, but it's not that bad. Everybody likes this assignment, I promise you, because you get to interview somebody either that you don't know or someone that you do know. Like you could interview your parents or, anybody you want. And you get to learn more about them. Okay, so you're going to write a rough draft, which I'll give you credit for. Then you're going to do a peer review of 2 other students' papers. I'll give you credit for that. And then you'll have your final draft. And then look on the syllabus for the points associated with that and for due dates. There's 11 quizzes. So I have 10 quizzes about chapters in that cultural anthropology textbook. And then there's 1 syllabus quiz. So that you should do soon by the end of this first week. So you should look over the syllabus, listen to this lecture, and then take that quiz. That's just so that I know that you're familiar with what's going on and what you have to do in order to succeed. There's 2 exams, a midterm and a final. Those consist of multiple choice and short answer questions. The multiple choice is from cultural anthropology and also from Voyages and the lectures and basically everything in class. So make sure that you keep up with that information. And then there's going to be some extra credit offered throughout the course, and one of those things is a final discussion board posting at the end of the semester, kind of feedback on talking about what you've learned, and you can get a chance to talk to other students about things that you would suggest for the class or things that you really found valuable. And then I'll offer other stuff. I'll send you emails about it. The maximum you can get for extra credit is 30 points. So the total course is out of 1,000 points. That means that if it's 30 points, that's 3 percentage points. So it's kind of the difference between if you're close to an A, but you have like an 87%, then with this extra, if you do all the extra credit, you can get an A. Does that make sense? Classroom policies. First of all, anthropology isn't boring. We're going to discuss issues like racism, poverty, gender inequality, sexuality, religion, immigration. These are touchy topics, and please be respectful of other people. I want you to share your opinions, but be tactful about it, and just be aware that maybe what you're talking about in an abstract way, like, oh, people, blah, 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 maybe somebody in the class is living that reality. So when you talk about gender identity or when you talk about race, just be respectful of that, right? I want us all to give our opinions, but just remember that. You don't know who's reading it and you don't want to offend anybody, right? Or make anybody feel bad. You just want to, but you can also get your ideas out there and have a healthy conversation. Please use the discussion forums to interact with your classmates. It's a great chance to learn about people's perspectives and learn to express your own. So make the most of that. Don't wait till the last minute. And then only submit original work, no copying, and be on time. So basically, I don't accept anything late unless you're having some kind of crazy emergency, which then you should email me and let me know what's going on as soon as possible. And then we can talk about what we can do about it. But on a day-to-day, regular kind of thing, I don't accept anything late. And that's especially for the discussion boards, because the purpose of them is to facilitate a conversation between students. So I don't let you I don't give you credit for late postings, because if it's late, then nobody's going to read it. You have not participated in the discussion board. So I don't extend due dates for that. Okay. But like I said, if you have an emergency, email me. Do not plagiarize or cheat. If you plagiarize, that's going to result in a 0. So that goes for the exams. There's a written portion. You'd be surprised how many people Google something and then cut and paste it and put it in the answer, which I can immediately tell that is cheating, okay? I read and write things for my job, so I read quickly and I can tell if you didn't write it. So don't do that, because just give an answer that you think you can give, and then you're going to get at least some points, right? Versus plagiarizing, you get a 0. That goes also with the paper. And if it's egregious enough, you could be reported to the school or get an F in the class. So I don't want that to happen to anybody. So please don't do that. The most important rule for any online class, and this one, is that you should check your email account daily. That's because I'm going to send announcements, updates, information about extra credit and exams through email. Some people miss those kind of announcements because they don't check their email. So if you don't know how to check your email, or maybe you only attend to your one class or something and you're not sure, then I'll put up a link about how you can contact the help desk and they can help you figure out your email. But you really want to check that, because sometimes I send announcements, and if you have it going to sent to another email, sometimes they don't go through. So just make sure that you are checking your email. If you have any questions, email me. Again, it's evogel@saddleback.edu. Write either the ticket number or just write online class in the subject so that I know what class you're in. And then please try to be formal and professional in your emails, and I'm going to try to do the same. Sometimes I get emails from students that are like, hey, blah, blah, or something, or they just say, when's the test, or something. First of all, I don't know who you are. You have to sign your email. And then also you should be practiced to be formal, right? Because we're in a kind of a professional environment, and I respect you and you respect me. So here's an example, make your subject the ticket number or online class, and then write syllabus question. Dear Professor Vogel, or Dear Erica, I have a question regarding, and then sincerely, and then your name. Okay, so write me, and then I'll get back with you within 24 hours. And if for some reason I don't, then maybe it went to my spam folder. So just email me again and just say, I just wanted to make sure you got my email. Okay, but I will get back with you within 24 hours. All right. So I look forward to meeting you on the discussion boards, and take a look around week 1. Bye.